I know exactly where this
remembering
is going.
Diglett. Is this a nose or is this a mouth?
I've always thought of that as the nose.
I did too. And now that I see it, I almost just see like this gaping mouth. I don't.
That
Do
is
you
kind
know
of
which one
funny.
it is?
I think it's the nose. I'm
Okay.
I I'm not choosing to believe that's his mouth going ah.
Yeah.
That is the nose. Like it's just it is like I refuse to acknowledge anything else.
But it does kind of look like a mouth too. I mean,
It kind of does, yeah.
hey everyone, welcome to the Millennial Button Mashers podcast. This is episode 6, where we'll be going into a brief history of Pokemon, the Pokemon types that we liked throughout the series, and also the games that we liked in this series as well. As many of you may know, Pokemon Day is upcoming on February 27th, so this is a prequel episode to that, and we want to go through the Pokemon series in its entirety. Again, the things that we liked, the things that we disliked, and the things that we're looking forward to with the upcoming Pokemon Day announcement. Quick thing here before we jump in, please make sure to like, subscribe. Feel free to comment throughout the podcast as well if there's any questions that you would like to answer that Gavin and myself got to answer during this podcast. And also, a quick disclaimer, I realized after the recording of this podcast that there is something around Vaporeon and the copy pasta. I had no idea about that, so please keep that in the back of your head. But when I'm answering some of these questions, please make sure that you are aware of that, because I had no idea. Pokemon is not necessarily my strong suit. Gavin was definitely a little bit more plugged into the community than I was with this. So just a quick disclaimer before we jump in. And with that, roll the tape, my friends. Let's go.
All right, for today's episode, we're going to focus on the worldwide phenomenon of Pokemon. This series is turning 30 years old this year, and for this episode, we are going to focus on the history of the franchise, what it means to both of us, and then we're kind of doing this as like a lead in to Pokemon Day, which is going to be February 27th. And since it's being 30 years old, it was created way back in 1996. And to get us kick-started, get the juices flowing, I wanted to throw out some rapid-fire questions for each of us. First question, Dylan. What is your favorite type of Pokemon?
Good question. Yeah, I actually struggled with this a little bit because I think, and we'll cover this later, but I think there's a difference between what is the starter Pokemon that you like and the type there, which I'll elaborate on later, versus like what is like the ultimate Pokemon, I think. So I chose Psychic, and I think the reason why I like it the most is because for the original ones, the blue, red, yellow, all those, that's obviously where Abra, Kadabra, and Alakazam came in for those Psychic type Pokemon. And I think the reason why I liked it so much is because they were hard to master, if that makes sense. Like Abra was always elusive. If you found him, you basically had to throw a Pokeball at him immediately. Otherwise, he would teleport away. Same thing with Kadabra. Kadabra would only show up every once in a while. So if you saw him, it was kind of rare. And then obviously you would have to get a Kadabra to be able to get Alakazam for the most part, like at least finding them in the wild.
Mm-hmm.
And I think because they were elusive, because they were so powerful, that's why I gravitated towards them. With obviously their psychic capabilities, I feel like it was kind of like a good catch-all because most other Pokemon types are at least somewhat receptive to psychic capabilities.
Yeah, I mean, it's just a cool aesthetic. Telekinesis is just like a cool concept, and that's like the embodiment of it. I respect that. For me, I would have to go with Ghost. It's a cool typing. A lot of the aesthetics are cool. Has some of my favorite Pokemon, I would say, like Gengar. Who doesn't love Gengar?
Classic.
Mimikyu and Aegislash. And I actually have a little poster of like a bunch of different ghost Pokemon I purchased at like a random con. See, like, oh, got a Gengar down there.
Mm-hmm.
All those, yeah. It's just, I don't know. Well, Ghost is just a cool type, and I'd say that's definitely my favorite. All
Yeah,
right,
let me ask you a quick
second
question on that
Oh yeah, yeah.
before we go on.
Go ahead.
Cubone. You find Cubone in the first one,
Yeah.
first Pokemon. Is he technically a ghost type or is he something else, a ground type? I can't remember.
No, it's ground type. Like the lore, like in the first game, you find that Marowak that's like the ghost of Cubone's mother. So like it is a little confusing, and they do kind of like pay homage to that in Sun and Moon. We'll get to there's a variant and a lowland version. So like that region's version of Marowak, which is Ghost and Fire, which is pretty cool.
Cool.
And it's kind of like a wink wink nudge nudge kind of at that. But yeah, it's just a ground type.
Cool. I got you. Whenever I think of ghost type Pokemon, especially Gengar and especially Haunter and the other ones, actually Haunter is probably my favorite out of the three, the evolution. Don't know
Yeah.
why, just like him. I think it's because he's kind of in the mix between like a wisp of like between Gengar and then obviously, what's the first one? Ghastly.
Yeah.
Yeah, like I think he's a good mix of both, and I love his little hands that he like swoops around with. I don't know, I'm really weird, but
Yeah.
I like
No,
it.
no, no. I always liked Ghastly from the anime when I was a kid. He was
Mhm.
Ghastly. Like, just the
Exactly.
way he said his name was hilarious.
Yeah, exactly.
Uh,
Cool. Let's go
all
to the
right,
second question.
second question. Yeah, second question, Dylan. What is your favorite evolution? So, if you don't know what that is, everyone, it's your favorite form of Eevee that evolves from the different stones.
Yes, I actually love Eevee. I think he is probably one of he or she, depending on which one you get, is always so cool because you really do get to choose truly the destiny of what that Eevee is through what Gavin mentioned with like the stone that you would give it, and it would actually transform into that stone type or whatever. But I also think Eevee on his own, without the stone, he's still very cool. Especially in the anime, think he was like a super cute Pokemon. But if I did have to pick one, I would always pick Vaporeon. I think
Okay.
I always gravitate towards water-based Pokemon, and I think because he's just got a very cool aesthetic with like the gills around his neck, the mermaid tail almost. I think he has a horn on his head as well. It's been a little minute since I've looked up Vaporeon, but he is definitely my favorite out of the, what is it, four technically in the original series, and then they expanded it to more.
I was saying the original, yeah, you had no, it's just a three. You just had Jolteon, Flareon, and Vaporeon.
Oh, that's right. Yeah.
And then they went to Espeon and Umbreon, and then you added in Leafeon and Glaceon, and then Sylveon.
Yeah. No, I just remember the original three. So those were the
Yeah,
three that I
yeah.
was originally thinking in the back of my head. But what about you?
Self, I would say it's Espeon. I kind of like a couple. Espeon is just it's a psychic. So it's a psychic type from Gen 2. It's pretty cool looking. I think recently though, Sylveon has passed it and become probably my favorite. It's very cute, like cutesy design, and it's fairy type, so it's good against dragons and stuff. And I
Yeah.
think it's like kind of they made it to be like a strong, like I don't think it's purpose, but it seems like it's a stronger version of all of them. So like I
Hmm.
I like it because it's a little bit stronger, and
Sure.
it's got the adorable factor.
Yeah. Which you probably said this already, so I apologize. I was kind of looking him up and on the side here. Which did he come first in? Like which game did he come out in?
I didn't say that. I believe Sylveon. Let me check that. Fact check that. I believe it's X and Y. Yeah, X and Y is its first. Which makes sense because that's the game where they introduced the fairy type.
Yeah, I got you. Yeah, because there was a certain period of my Pokemon career life, whatever you want to call it, where I fell off, which we'll talk about shortly, I'm sure. But I
Yeah.
remember playing the originals, and then I played all the way up until Crystal, I think, and then I kind of fell off until I got the Switch, which I picked up Scarlet and Violet. But either way,
Yeah.
cool.
I've been a lifer. Next question on that topic. What was your favorite game in the series?
Great question. Leaf Green is my favorite just because I'm a sucker and for the original OG Pokemon list. And I think they did a really good
Mm-hmm.
job with Leaf Green in terms of upping the graphic capabilities, upping the art direction as well, kind of just modernizing it for the more mainstream audience that it hit. And obviously, we'll talk about this later too, but with Pokemon Day coming up, they just released Leaf Green and Fire Red on the Switch, which is pretty cool. Don't know if I'm a huge fan of them charging $20 for it, but I get they have to make money. But Leaf Green has always held a special place in my heart just because of the OG, character set, so to speak, and then the updated graphics and art style. So that's my choice.
Okay. Yeah, for me, I'd probably say Pokemon Crystal,
Yep.
mostly because of the sentimentality from if you remember the story from the previous episode where I kind of explained how I got that game.
Mm-hmm.
I can retell it here in a little bit if we want, if we've got time. But yeah, I'd say Pokemon Crystal. The Gen 2 games in general just like did a lot for me. It was just great. Like, because it's still one of the only ones that has done this where it has its whole new region and then you branch off and go back to the original like Kanto region.
Mm-hmm.
And it like just that part for me was fun because like normally when you went through that in the first gen, it was like you go to Brock and he's got like 3 Pokemon and they're all weak and like you find them with your
Yep.
weak Pokemon. But this time you roll up with like a you know the Death Squad, like you've got your strongest guys and you're like thinking, as a kid you're thinking, oh, he's just gonna have his wimpy. No, he's got a full team. And he's like he's not messing around. He's got like a
Hmm.
strong team this time, and it was cool to fight those guys again that you had fought in the old game, but like with an updated roster.
Yeah. Do you remember what levels they were? Because I know like it's always stuck in my head that like Brock typically was the first person that you got involved with, but he was like what between level 12 and 15 to 16 or something like that.
Yeah, the original's like I think 16 is his ace, like the
Yeah.
Onyx is
Yep.
his strong. And then I think the second, like when you fight him, when you go to Kanto, it's in like the 40s. I don't know the
Wow. Okay.
exact level. I don't, yeah, because like it's after you beat the Elite Four the first time, so like you've got to be like
Hmm.
somewhat up there in level, and
Yeah.
then you go across regions, and then you fight you get all the 8 original badges, and then you fight the Elite Four again.
Interesting.
So like I think it's around there. I don't
Yeah.
know the exact level, but on the topic of the originals, I know this one will pause it towards you, but what's your favorite starter? Like I guess I was thinking more like specific Pokemon, which one of them is your favorite?
Yeah,
I
for
see,
sure.
yeah.
Yeah, I did put Squirtle down as my favorite. Again, like we've talked about before, definitely nostalgia, but Squirtle is my dude. And I think Water type was always the first one that I gravitated to as well, just in general throughout the entire series, because in terms of starter Pokemon, because usually the first gym owner or whoever was typically susceptible to water type damage. Obviously, in the originals, it was always a rock Pokemon, which, water based Pokemon would kick their ass. And so very easy to just like start off. And then I don't know if you ever did this, Gavin, but like playing it so many times through, I always kind of try to do something different or challenge myself when I tried to replay it. And one of the ways that I did that for some time, and of course, like you eventually have to get more than one Pokemon, but I tried to just keep one Pokemon for like the first 3 or 4 gym leaders. Squirtle was the one that I was able to do that
Interesting.
mostly with because you would basically get like a super powered Squirtle slash if you let it evolve, whatever. But he was the most well rounded for the first couple of gym bosses until you
Mm-hmm.
got until like probably 4 or 5. I can't remember. I do know, like, obviously the second gym boss is a water based boss as well. So that is challenging. But once you get over that kind of hump, you're kind of smooth sailing a little bit.
Yeah, I think it's the third. Yeah, once you get to the third gym with Lieutenant Surge, that one's tough because it's electric.
Right.
But
Right.
after that, it's like you're chilling. But
Exactly.
no,
Yeah.
I never really did the one Pokemon. There's a bunch of different challenges that people do now, and it'll come up in the very end when we talk about things that Pokemon
Sure.
can do better. But
Yeah.
people have come up with like self-imposed challenges called like a Nuzlocke, where the whole point is to make it like because Pokemon inherently is a very simple, kind of easy game, straightforward. So they impose these rules on themselves to make the game actually difficult. So like
Mm,
for example, the basic bones of it is you can only catch the first Pokemon you run into in any route. That's the only
okay.
Pokemon you can catch in that area. So if you go to the first patch of grass and you get a Caterpie, well, you're only going to be able to have a Caterpie. The second
On top
little
of your
caveat,
starter Pokemon.
yeah. You get
Okay.
your
Okay.
starter Pokemon. So like every time you go into a new area, you can catch something, and but you can only catch the first thing you run into. So then on top of that, so that's like the first like rule. The second rule is if a Pokemon faints in battle, it's dead forever. You have to release it. And in order
Oof.
to make that even hit harder, you have to nickname every single Pokemon so that way it actually has sentimental value to you. So you like nickname it stuff, and then so if it faints, it's gone forever. And then a third rule that people usually implement, and there's like a whole these are just like the base bonus rules, are
Mhm.
your Pokemon cannot be stronger level wise than the next gym leader's strongest Pokemon. So you can't like just
Okay.
over level and make it easy. So like
Got it.
going into that first one, I believe it is 16, where Brock's Onyx is level 16. So your Pokemon can only be level 16. Like that's so that adds like the challenge into it, and it's fun. I've done a couple. It's a fun way, and you end up using Pokemon that you've never used before because it's just what you catch what you run into and catch. And it
Right.
also adds challenges because sometimes you'll go into the electric gym and you'll have enough nothing but like stuff that gets wiped by it. So you have to figure out creative ways to like do it. So it's basically making a hard mode for Pokemon. my favorite starter, similar to you, or I guess not similar to you. I don't really tend to go for a type. I always look at like the base forms of the first like three starters, and I go like kind of go vibes based. Like which one is like the cutest or like coolest? Like which one, I don't know, which one puts off the coolest vibe. And I would say for me, my favorite starter is probably Decidueye, which if you don't know, it's from the Sun and Moon games, and it starts off as a Rowlet, which is just a cute little grass. He's the grass starter, and he starts off as a little owl, and then he evolves eventually into Decidueye, who's like this super badass like archer. Like he's like a ghost flying or ghost grass type, and like he's like a hidden like he's an archer that can like hide in the shadows and stuff like that. And like it's just a really cool aesthetic, and it reminded me of like one of my favorite classes in D&D. Fun fact is a Gloomstalker Rogue. It's like kind of the same kind of vibe as him, and that's
Hmm.
why I don't know. It's just I think he looks cool. It's a cool like little story, and then it's an interesting type. Like Ghost and Grass was a fun type, which plays into the Ghost being my favorite type as well.
Right. No, I like him. Like I obviously didn't know him very much because I think this
Yeah,
was the era where I didn't play much.
yeah.
Which one did you say that he was attached to? Which game?
He originally came out with Sun and Moon, which was
Okay.
three.
Gotcha. Okay. Cool. No, he
Yeah,
looks very cool.
yeah.
I
He's pretty dope.
remember I remember a side story here. So like when I was first starting my career, I had a friend Nick and he was super into Pokemon and he was into big into plushies as well. So he actually decorated his little cubicle at work and he had a Rowlet. So like that's the only reason why
Oh
I
yeah.
know Rowlet.
I mean, he's cute. He's a cute little guy.
He is.
He's cute.
Mhm.
He's a little owl with a bow tie. Like, what's not to
Mhm.
love? That's like
Exactly.
literally why I picked him. I didn't even know like the evolution. I was just like, cute little owl with a bow tie.
Yeah, he looks badass too. Like I
Dude,
think that's a
yeah.
good combo. Like starting cute and then just ending
And
up
then
just being like this absolute badass. Like that's super cool.
yeah, it's crazy. Like sometimes, start cute, end cute, or start like ugly, end up bad at like it was perfect. I was so happy that he turned into like a cool Pokemon because I just rolled with him.
And can we
Yeah.
just say he's shredded? Look at this little abs that he's
Yeah.
got.
Yeah.
What are we doing here?
Yeah.
Anyways, I had to show the crowd that. That's so cool. Anyways,
Yeah. Yeah. So leading into our last rapid fire questions, which they've been a little bit delayed because, we like to ramble here. But what's your favorite overall Pokemon?
yes. And this one's hard. I think just because I've already talked about the OGs, let's say, I wanted to bring in one of the newer Pokemon that I got exposure to, and that's Toxtricity. Hopefully, I said that correctly. I think the interesting thing, going back to what you said, Gavin, about Decidueye, him being a ghost and grass is very unique. I think because of Toxtricity, him being poison and electric attracted me to him. Also,
Yeah.
we've already talked about this in the pre-show. Basically, whenever he like defeats somebody, he like kind of like air guitars, and I think that's hilarious. And
Yeah.
so that's why I picked him. But I was telling
Yeah.
Gavin before we jumped on to found Toxtricity when I wasn't supposed to within Pokemon Violet. I think yeah, Scarlet and Violet. I don't remember exactly which one I bought. I could look on my Nintendo Switch, but I found him early, and I think I got him at like level 32. Caught him, and all my other Pokemon were like in the 20s, and I had not hit the gym owner quite yet that I would be able to control Pokemon basically above the level of 30. So he was kind of just like
Mhm.
he was very arrogant. He was very much like wouldn't listen to me whatsoever. And obviously that was good incentive for me to go and find
Yeah.
that next gym leader and, defeat him or whatever. But I just remember he was kind of like a challenge at first, which is probably kind of telling for my personality as well. Cause like if you go back to like the first question you asked about psychic Pokemon, like the elusiveness of the psychic Pokemon kind of also bleeds into Toxtricity too, because of when I
Yeah.
found him, he wasn't ready to be my friend. So I had to work and build that relationship with him. So I just think he's a very cool Pokemon as well.
Yeah. It's very cool. And real quick, I'm gonna go get a little show and tell for my favorite Pokemon.
Sure.
Actually,
Yeah.
I'll be right. All right. For my favorite Pokemon is Piplup.
That's so
I mean,
cute.
look at this guy. He's the water starter from Pokemon like Diamond, Pearl, Platinum. I know he's a starter, so I kind of cheated by not picking him for my favorite starter, but he's my favorite overall, so I figured I'd pick a different starter. I mean, penguins are my favorite animal in general. I mean, look at this guy. And then he
Exactly.
also turns into eventually evolves into Empoleon, which is
Hmm.
like a cool looking regal like king penguin, like emperor penguin, kind of inspired by. I'm assuming that's where they got the inspiration from. And yeah, he just looks really cool.
Yep, exactly. I didn't
Yeah,
know him either, so just for the folks
yeah,
at home, if you're not aware either, here's the 3 evolutions as well that could be helpful to see. I think it's always interesting to see like how they start and then where they go, because you're right, like most of them start pretty cute, and I wonder if that was like a psychology thing, like if they want us to pick something cute and then that's what they want us to like eventually evolve into is like these badass Pokemon. But yeah, I didn't know who this was, so just in case
yeah,
folks at home
yeah.
weren't aware either.
Good old
So very
Piplup,
cool. Your homie. I have a
my
question for you too,
homie.
Gavin.
Yeah, what's up?
What is a Pokemon that you like but don't like the evolution of? That's a on the spot question we didn't
Ooh,
prep for.
on the spot
I can
question.
I can go first
Yeah,
if you
yeah,
want. That way, give you some time to
yeah.
think. So going back to the OGs, and I
Mm-hmm.
think you'll understand the reasoning behind this when I say this. So Pikachu, I do not like Raichu at all. Like I
Yeah.
think it's one of those evolutions where I almost wish I could just give him one of those. I can't remember what stone you give him, but he wouldn't evolve if you give him
Oh,
this
an
stone.
Everstone.
That's right. Yeah,
Yeah,
so
but
Everstone.
well, with
Go
Pikachu,
ahead.
you have to give him the Thunderstone anyways. So like, so if you just never give him the Thunderstone, he'll never evolve. So you can just keep it as a little cute Pikachu.
That's true.
So
That's true.
that's
But yeah, but I still to this day, like if I was to get a Pokemon in the wild, I would try to not have him evolve into Raichu. Not because like Raichu's bad or anything. I just don't feel like he adds much to the equation, if that makes sense.
yeah. It doesn't.
Like Pikachu on his own
Well,
is pretty powerful as he is. So
it didn't help that. It also didn't help that in the anime, like Pikachu became the mascot of
exactly.
Pokemon. So like its evolved form basically it's starting to get some love. Like they're starting to like do stuff for it, but like they've done things to make Pikachu better on its own. Like they've introduced an item that like when it's held by a Pikachu specifically, it increases its
Hmm.
attack and special attack because Pikachu's stats on its own are not that great because it's supposed to be evolved. But because it became the mascot, people are like, well, we need, or the Pokemon Company is like, we need to like make this thing viable by itself because we want it to be the face. So then they added that item. And like recently, within the most recent game, Legends ZA, they're introducing 2 new Mega evolutions for Raichu to try to give it some love. Like
Hmm.
because people like you, like people do a lot like you, they don't evolve their Pikachu because it's Pikachu.
Right.
Like
Exactly. Which was what I was gonna
everyone
say
knows
too.
Pikachu. Yeah,
Yeah, there's such a staying power to Pikachu as like he's almost the mascot that inevitably will live on, whether you're in our generation or another one. Like you think of when you think of Pokemon, even if you don't know Pokemon very well, like intimately, like we do, you still know who Pikachu is, very likely.
I mean, you could roll up to like an 80-year-old grandma. She knows who Pikachu is.
Exactly, exactly. But that's my choice.
I think there's one so I think there's one Pokemon I can think of that I like its base form. I also like
Hmm.
its evolution, but its base form is like infinitely cuter, and that's why I like it. His name is Applin. He's a little dragon, grass dragon, and he's literally like a little apple with a worm coming out of it, and the worm is the dragon, and then it evolves. It has multiple different types of evolutions, but like the base Applin is the cute like the is what drew me into the Pokemon. But I still
Hmm.
like the other ones. So I guess the other one I was thinking of was Scyther from like the
Oh yeah.
original, and then they added the evolution of Scizor, which
I didn't
I don't
even know
know.
that.
Scyther just looks cooler. Caesar is like okay, like it's arguably stronger because it evolves and stuff like that. I don't know. I think I just like Caesar, or I like Scyther better than Caesar. But then
No, I agree.
if you want to look up Applin because it's probably one you're not super familiar with since you are an OG or a Gen Oneer, if you will. But Applin
Hmm.
is a real cutie.
Yeah, I'm pulling up a picture of him right now, and he's got multiple snakes coming out of him or something.
No, so that's one of his evolutions.
So this is what I'm seeing on my quick search. So you tell me if I'm wrong. You obviously know this a little bit more intimately than I do,
Here,
but this is what I was
I'll
pulling up on
send
the
you.
right side.
Can you see the chat in our little thing?
Mm-hmm.
Click
Let
on
me see.
that. Use that link, and then there's like that's what I use to like look up Pokemon stats and stuff like that. Use that.
Let me see if I can pull this up because it's not showing. Weird.
That's just a
I can.
website. Yeah.
see that there's something there, but it's not showing me anything. Either
Okay,
way.
just go to PokemonDB.net and then type Applin, because then it pulls up like a big picture, and then you can like click through It's like Wikipedia kind of for specifically Pokemon.
I got you. I just found I was searching Applin and it came up with Applin juice as well.
Yeah, it's an item.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Okay, I'll pull them up. Here we are. Full core Pokemon. That's cool. Okay,
Yeah.
here's his evolution chart.
So then
So
you
he turns
can,
into like an apple pie
so
character.
so there's 3 different evolutions. Like the top one is like it tells you how you evolve them, right?
Mm-hmm.
So like
Yep.
the middle one, the Appleton, he's probably one of my favorites. The top one is Flapple. I'm not a huge fan of him. Like if it was only Flapple, I would like Applin better. Appleton is like an apple pie. And then a newer one that was introduced in Scarlet Violet is Diplin, which then evolves into Hydrapple. And it's, yeah, literally you make a syrup covered apple, like a caramel apple, and that's his evolution. So like
Oh my
it
gosh.
plays into the whole like food aesthetic of it, and it's just like a cute little dragon. Like
Mhm.
that thing
It's
is
silly.
a
I like
dragon
it.
and will run your fade and mess you up.
Mm-hmm. No, I love it. Sweet. Cool. Very nice.
Yeah, that's a good
Cool.
question. I like that.
Yeah.
So now that we've had our appetites, got done with the appetizer that was our rapid fire questions, and that those are taken care of, feel free to put your answers for any of those questions in the comments. But now that once that's taken care of, now let's get into the meat and potatoes of this episode. We're gonna jump into the history, like brief history, and kind of do a little like we normally do, kind of rundown of the franchise and like little stories here and there. Pokemon which was originally called Pocket Monsters, as I said earlier, was created on February 27th, 1996 by Game Freak. The series originally comprised of the games Red and Green in Japan and has sparked countless games, multiple anime, manga, movies, trading card games, merchandise, etc., etc. And then it became the premier intellectual property in the creature collecting genre. Pokemon didn't invent it, it just kind of became the best, quote unquote, at it. There's things it does right, things it does wrong. But it wasn't exported into like the rest of the world until 1998 to 2000, depending on the area. US, it was 98. And they changed the green version to blue, which is, I looked into this a little bit in the pre-show because I wasn't sure as to why that happened. Mostly that's because in Japan, they made a blue version after green because there's a lot of problems with the green version, like bad coding and a lot of bugs and stuff like that. So they made the blue version as a way to like fix those issues.
Sure.
And then when they wrote the coding for the US version and all the other international versions, they just used the blue coding. So then I guess there's no real reason, like it doesn't really state a reason as to why they did it, but I'm assuming since they stuck with that, they just made it the blue version.
Sure.
And then, I mean, once they were exported to the world, it started Pokemania. If those of you that weren't around when that, it was truly a virus that was spread amongst the children, and there was people talking about it left, right, and center about how it's bad and all this other thing.
Yeah.
Interesting thing about Pokemon is, unlike most games and other intellectual properties, it is collectively owned by 3 separate companies. Those companies are Game Freak, Nintendo, and Creatures Inc. They each kind of do a different thing. Game Freak publishes the games for Nintendo consoles, so like Nintendo, like it works with them, so that's why they're only on Nintendo consoles.
Mm-hmm.
And then Creatures, they control the trading card game, the merchandising, and then occasional spin-offs, like spin-off games. Like I believe they're involved with like your like Pokemon Snap and like a lot of those like Pokemon adjacent games.
Sure.
And Order back in like 1990, so that's how it was originally run for like the first couple years. And then in 1998, they formed what is now known as the Pokemon Company. So it's a company that's like ran by the 3 of them as like a kind of collective to help have it under one conglomerate to help better and easier to manage like the whole, like to that way it's not like running through 3 different things. They have it at one company and
Right,
then
manage the brand.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So that's
Kind of like
a
how
brief.
Call of Duty is too, with their sub publishers or whatever, because they rotate through, I think, like 3 different developers.
Yeah. So it'd be like if they came together and made the Call of Duty company and then
Right.
still published them differently. Instead, would there be less like differences, I think, between the games? But yeah, so that's like the brief like kind of background on what they are. And let's do a quick, well, probably not too quick, but it'll be a rundown of the games per console. So first console was the Game Boy, and you had your red and green, which turned into blue. You had red, blue, and then eventually a couple years later they came out with the yellow version, which was a another version of your red and blue, but it kind of modeled itself after the anime.
Yep.
And your Pokemon partner, instead of being, your Charmander, Bulbasaur, Squirtle, you woke up late, so you missed all of them, and you're stuck with this delinquent Pikachu that doesn't want to listen to orders at first and doesn't like you, but you're stuck with it. And then eventually, throughout the story, you do end up getting Charmander, Squirtle, and Bulbasaur, so you can have them all. Kind of nice, just like in the anime. And they even introduced, like, in Team Rocket, they have the, like, Jesse and James, and it's cool. And those ones, so which one of those did you play, Dylan?
Good question. I had red and blue.
Okay.
I think my brother got into Pokemon first, and then obviously being the little brother, I tried to tag along. But I think eventually I ended up getting yellow as well. And I think my mom bought yellow for me because of the anime. Like, I think that was
Okay.
the
Makes sense.
impetus behind it. And I
Yeah.
will say, just really quickly, the interesting thing about these publishers or these games at the time, like you mentioned, like blue in Japan was very buggy, or green. I can't remember exactly which one you mentioned.
It was
but
green.
It was green. Okay. The interesting thing is, like, back then, you had to ship a brand new product. You couldn't push a code update like we're fortunate enough to do today. Like, think about the last time, like, we talked about this in the past, Cyberpunk 2077. Think about if, CD Projekt Red published this game, pushed it out, let's say back in the 90s, and it was just a debacle. There's nothing you can do about it. Like,
They'd be
it says
bankrupt.
exactly, it's a sunk cost. Versus now, they can, get their crap together. Keeping it PC for the kiddies on the line that might be here. They can push code updates and fix it. So that's not something that we had the luxury of back in the 90s and early 2000s for that matter. So it's just interesting to say, like, that's why they created a new version. Like, I had no idea. So that's interesting.
Yeah, that's why blue was originally created. And it's kind of like, well, when we talk about the rest of the games, like the early on games, they would put out two and then they would put out a third that kind of combines the aspects of the first two. And they didn't really patch anything there, but they almost used that as if they needed to, they could patch it through.
Right.
And it was fun. I think the first one I actually played was yellow. I got yellow first.
Really? Okay.
Before I played like red or blue. And the cool thing about, aside from it being like close to the anime, the cool thing about yellow was if you had Pikachu as your first member of your party, he would like run behind you, and that was like, it was cool because you got to see it out and about in the wild.
I didn't realize that he wasn't always behind you. Like, if he was not your first,
I think if he wasn't your first, if I'm remembering correctly, he wouldn't trail behind you.
Okay, that's cool.
Yeah, so those were the Game Boy games. Then we go on to the Game Boy Color. So that's when you had your gold, silver, and then they did this is when they started kind of doing a third version where the story's a little different. You can catch both version exclusives because that's a big thing back then. I guess they still do it today. You can only catch certain Pokemon in certain games. So then they used to do a third version, which in this case it was Crystal, where you could catch both version exclusives. The story was a little bit different, but overall it was the same game. Obviously, you know which one I played. I actually played Gold first because it came out first. I played a lot of Gold, and then once Crystal came out, when the story where I got Crystal, I was at the water park, and my mom said that if I jumped off the high dive, that was as a 9-year-old kid was like 100 feet in the air, but it was probably like 10 or 12 feet. She's like, she didn't think I'd do it. She said, if you go off that, I'll get you that game. And I closed my eyes and ran off the cliff and landed in the water to get that game, which is why it's my favorite game. And so those were the three on the Game Boy Color. Which of those did you play?
Good question. So I remember playing Gold and Silver at the time.
Mm-hmm.
And being the youngest of four, my sisters were in AAU basketball. And I remember when I got the Game Boy Color, I'd bring that thing everywhere with me.
Yeah.
And I think I brought Gold and Silver with me mostly to those tournaments when I was, call it 4 or 5 years old. I can't remember exactly when it
Mm-hmm.
potentially, hit me as a consumer. But I did play Gold and Silver, and I think to your point, Gavin, I think the interesting thing that Pokemon still does to this day is create two copies of basically the same game, but then they have exclusives covered in within it. So yeah, I can't remember exactly which one I gravitated to more, and I might have actually had both now that I think about it. Or maybe I had Gold, my brother had Silver. I can't remember. But I did play those. And I think I did play Crystal too, but I don't think I was as gravitating towards it.
Yeah. That makes sense. There's a lot of people that I know, like my older brothers before I was in, there was my stepbrothers, but before I was into their, like, joined in the family when they were younger, they used to one would get one version, one would get the
Hmm.
other version.
Yep.
And so that way they could trade across things. And I actually, like, as much of it is kind of annoying that they make those version exclusives, it is the sentiment behind it to where, like, it promotes you making friends and, like, finding people to trade with
Sure.
is nice, but at the same time, just freaking let me catch them all, man.
Right.
Like,
Right. Well, that's the
but
thing that kind
yeah.
of annoys me with like the renditions of like obviously Leaf Green and Fire Red that just came out on Switch and obviously were revamped for us as well.
Hmm.
That was a big frustration for me is because you would get one of these starter Pokemon and then don't get me wrong, like I loved the Pokemon starter that I would pick regardless of if I picked, Squirtle, Charmander, or Bulbasaur. Loved all three of them.
Hmm.
But you couldn't really find them out in the wild either. So like you were basically
Yeah.
stuck with that starter Pokemon regardless. Like you could find a Charmander or a Bulbasaur out in the wild, you would just have to hunt and hunt and hunt for it. And I'm just not that type of person. Like I probably instant gratification, we're millennials, but like that was the frustrating piece for me too. Which did you say in yellow you had more ability to get the other ones?
So in yellow, eventually, because you can't get the starter, like in yellow, you couldn't get the starters like the normal way, and then they weren't available in the wild. At random parts in the story, you would run into like similar to like kind of how Ash does. Like
Yeah.
he ran into the you don't run into it like this, but you ran into the Squirtle squad, and then Squirtle wanted to stay with him because he was like, this guy's cool. Or
Hmm.
you run into a random, like, you save the Charizard from the neglecting owner because the guy
Left them
doesn't
out
want
in
his
the rain, right?
Charmander. Yeah, left him out in the rain. Which, can we just talk for a second? He was trying to kill him because it
Yeah.
says in the Pokedex, if Charmander's tail goes out, it'll die. So you left
Hmm.
this thing out in the rain, and he's like huddled over with a leaf covering his freaking tail. It's like this fire's this big. It's like, dude, you were gonna let that thing die? Like,
It's
I
super
remember as a kid,
sad.
like, almost bawling my eyes out because it was like, you're gonna let him die. So then saves it from the Charmander, and then with the Bulbasaur where they ran into like the bunch of wild Pokemon, and then
Mhm.
Bulbasaur at first was like combative towards Ash because Ash was trying to catch Pokemon, and Bulbasaur didn't want about he wasn't about that vibe. But then he realized that, like, they're good trainers and stuff like that, so then he ended up running with them. So in that game you kind of run into that same thing. It's not the exact same like
Sure.
story beats, but you run into like people that are like give you those three starters, so you can end up having all three, which was kind of nice.
Nice. I might have to buy, buy the yellow one just so I can play that. So that's cool.
Yeah. And then, so those were the three games, and then another console came out. We had the Game Boy Advance.
Hmm.
That's when you had your new titles of Ruby, Sapphire, and Emerald, which was the third version. Ruby and Sapphire were first, and then your favorites, the Fire Red and Leaf Green, which were remakes of the originals. Which I kind of liked that they went back to the green. They like kind of paid homage to, like,
Hmm.
hey, this used to be green. Because I remember as a kid, I didn't know that. I was like, why are they
I
doing
didn't know
green?
that
Shouldn't it be
either.
like water blue? But I guess that doesn't really sound cool.
Right.
So yeah, that's why they did leaf green. And then the cool thing about that was it added some of the Generation 3 Pokemon into the original game. So like you got to play the old game with new Pokemon.
Right. Exactly.
I remember this wasn't when these games came out, but in high school, my senior year, a friend of mine named Josh, we would both, during government class, so really paid attention, but we would play. I think I played Ruby, and I think he played Sapphire. We would just sit there and on our Game Boy Advances, like, had the Game Boy Advance, just real senioritis moment. We didn't,
Hmm.
we given didn't give a toot, and just played Pokemon during government class.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
I played Ruby, and then I think I had Fire Red.
Okay.
Were the two I had from that generation.
Nice. Yeah, I think when I had Game Boy, and I don't think I even had a Game Boy Advance, just to be clear. I think we talked about this before. I had the Game Boy SP, which was just like a flip phone, basically, for those not
It's
aware.
Game Boy Advance
Advance
SP. So
SP,
it was
right.
another version of that one.
Right. Well, I guess when I think of Game Boy Advance, I think of like just like the horizontal screen versus
Yeah,
like
the Y.
traditionally, exactly. Yeah, traditionally like with like the Game Boy was huge. Game Boy Color was a little bit smaller. I think mine was yellow. I don't know if what color yours was, but at Game Boy Advance SP, I played. I believe it was Ruby and Sapphire. Again, having an older brother, I think we just split the two, and we would
Yeah, you
alternate
did
between.
one. Yeah.
Exactly, but I never got into Emerald. I don't think. But obviously, Fire Red and Leaf Green. I still go back to those games every once in a while if I need like a little extra Pokemon TLC. So
Yeah. So, fun fact about Emerald. So, like, Crystal was like Gold and Silver, but it was the same game with like a tiny change, like a tiny little change. Emerald, they kind of changed a lot because like a lot of the story change. There's a lot of story changes that are made. They changed a lot of the like Pokemon gym leaders, Pokemon like the Pokemon that they ran with, and like kind of made it harder. And then like some of the evil team of that generation, they changed some of their Pokemon around and like made it different. Because like if you remember from Ruby and Sapphire, in Ruby, the bad guy team was Team Aqua, and then you had
mm-hmm.
Team Magma on your team, and then it was flipped on the other version.
Right.
And but in Emerald, it was different. So there's like actually like different enough story to where it is kind of a different game, which was really cool.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking it up right
yeah.
now. Yeah. Because obviously not playing it myself, I just figured it was a different rendition of
Yeah.
Ruby and Sapphire where they would have different starters, but it's where they had Trico, Torchic, and Mudkip as the starters. So
Yeah, all
actually,
three
really,
of those.
what's
Yeah,
your
go ahead.
favorite out of those three?
Out of those three, Mudkip.
Yeah, yeah,
No
I agree.
hesitation. It's Mudkip.
Yeah, I
Like
think. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, the first, like if you go like generation by generation, like first generation, that's tough between all three. Like all
Right.
three are like awesome. Then if you
Mm-hmm.
go to generation two, I feel like there's two obvious choices and then one that no one chooses.
Mm-hmm.
And then we're not gonna name names, but if you know, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then generation three, also a very like all three are kind of tough choices because they're all three pretty cool. Like, but for me, it was Mudkip.
Yeah, for sure. I think for me it was Torchic, just because I think I liked Blaziken at the end.
Yeah, Blaziken's pretty awesome.
Yeah, which I think, and you might be alluding to this. Trico was not my favorite. Like the fact that he
No,
started with
I like
Pound,
Trico.
he was okay. I mean, I didn't mind him, and I didn't mind the final one that he
Yeah,
transferred into or evolved into.
yeah,
But the middle one, like Graviol or whatever, I
yeah.
wasn't a huge fan.
Grovyle. Yeah,
Yeah,
Grovyle
like
stinks.
yeah. Which like when you look at him when he evolves, looks very cool. He's mid-flight, he's like attacking whatever. But then you see the back of him when you're battling, and he looks like this like gothic guy that is like listening to My Chemical Romance, and I'm like, no, I don't like you. So, anyways, I always try like if I did play around with Trico, I try to make sure I evolved him quick, and then got to Grovol, however you say it, and then got to
Yeah,
the final one, which I'm
yeah.
blanking on
Sceptile.
exactly what his name was. Yeah, there you
It's
go. So,
Sceptile. Yeah. No, the
yeah.
starter with which I was referring to from Generation Two is Chikorita, the one that's just a little bean. It's a little bean.
Do I even know that? Which game is that from?
It's from Gold and Silver.
Okay,
It's the
I'm looking
grass
this up.
starter. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yeah. Never mind. Yeah,
Like
you're right.
the final evolution is cool, but like the
Yeah,
first two are just so bad that like so the
yeah.
two that I was saying that like are the tough choices is between Cyndaquil and Totodile.
Totodile.
Or the
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think I went with Cyndaquil if I remember
Yeah,
correctly my first time, but
I think so too.
yeah, so yeah. That was so Chikorita's gotten some love. It got spoiler alert, it did get a new mega evolution from Meganium
Mm.
in Pokemon Legends ZA, and it actually looks pretty sweet, but yeah, it was tough. It was tough getting through that little bean, green bean.
Little green bean.
Yeah. So on to the next generation, which is
Yep.
Nintendo DS. This is where you had your Diamond, Pearl, and then Platinum, which is similar to the Emerald, where it is like kind of a separate game. Same, they change up story stuff and make it better. which I wish they would keep doing that. That was kind of cool. Now they're kind of just doing DLCs, which is a whole topic of discussion, which we'll probably get into some future episode, how we feel about them. But then after those three, you had the next generation. So this is one of the first times that you had multiple generations on one console. You had Black and White, which was interesting because it was the first time in Pokemon that they had done in it. They with Black and White, they made an entire generation of only new Pokemon. If you play the original Black and White, there will be no Pokemon from a previous game in it, so they made an entire new Pokedex, which is pretty cool. It was controversial at the time because people up until that point, it was like mostly new Pokemon, but with some old Pokemon sprinkled in from other games to like kind of tie you in. Around that same time, I think this is kind of how they like got away with it. They also remastered Gold and Silver with Heart Gold and Soul Silver. Both of those being I was a Heart Gold guy, but like those games are awesome. Did a very similar thing to like what you said with Fire Red Leaf Green, where it brought the graphics to at the time modern day standards, revamped the story and stuff, and added the new Pokemon that had come out since then into that game that you were able to have. And also one of the cool things it did is it allowed it pulled from Pokemon Yellow as well, where it allowed whoever was in your first starting, like your lineup spot, whoever was first in your lineup, as long as you weren't indoors, so if you're out in the world, would just follow you around. And it was just awesome. And sometimes they would be out in certain buildings, but sometimes they'd get put away. But it was funny because like the size of these Pokemon, sometimes like a Wailord, like one of the biggest Pokemon, like size wise, just a giant whale, would just be following you around, and you like go into a Pokemon Center, and then it comes out of the ball, and it's just behind you, and you're like, how is that fitting in this building? Like, what are we like logistically? This is almost bigger than the building. How is this happening? But that was really cool. And then after those games, you had Black 2 and White 2, which is kind of what they leaned into doing with instead of doing the Diamond Pearl Platinum, they made sequel games, which they did that a couple more times after that, which we'll get into. But this is like the same game, but it takes place like 5 years later. And then they added old Pokemon in. They heard what people said about them not wanting to play, and then, or not being able to play old Pokemon rather. And then they added those into those games as well. So I know you said this is kind of when you got out of the game. Have you played any of these games?
I honestly have not. I was just looking up while you were talking, like all the different starter Pokemon. They all look cool and all different, unique, and things like that. But no, I mean, I had a Nintendo DS, so like I could have had those games.
Yeah.
But yeah, for some reason I fell off. I don't know why, but
I mean, there's a lot of people have it. You kind of you get too old for Pokemon for some people, and then you circle back hopefully because you realize who cares what people think.
Exactly.
But I would say if you're gonna play any of the Diamond Pearl Platinum, definitely play Platinum. It's the third version. It's optimized and all that stuff. And if you need any suggestions on which starter to pick,
yes.
Yeah.
I'm looking up the three of them. Obviously, I didn't play these games, so do you feel like any of them other than Piplup, like which one would you have picked other than Piplup, like Chimchar or Turtwig?
I liked if Piplup wasn't in it, I probably would have picked Chimchar. Because I mean, he's a cute little fire monkey, and it turns into he eventually turns into Infernape, which is like a really cool, like he's like feels like a monk vibe, like a fighting monk vibe where he's a monkey as well. And then Turtwig, he's a cute little grass turtle, like pretty cool vibe. And then he eventually evolves into Torterra, which is a grass ground, and he's kind of like a walking biome. Like he's like if you look him up, he's like a big old turtle with like trees growing on his back, and like it's just a cool it's a cool aesthetic. They're all pretty cool. Like this is one of the generations where it is kind of a tough choice between the three. We all know my choice, but it kind of depends on how you want to go with it, because Torterra is more of like a defensive kind of guy. Like he's a big, bulky defense guy. Fernape's like, I'm going to punch you in the mouth. Like I'm very offensive focused. Empoleon is kind of like a well-rounded. Like he gets the steel typing, which is very good defensively focused typing, and then he's like pretty good at like certain attacks and stuff. So it's kind of like your
Cool.
well-rounded versus your offense versus your defense.
Nice. No, I like it.
Yeah, yeah. And then for black and white, those ones, those starters were also pretty cool. If you want to look those up,
Mm-hmm. Yeah, looking up all three of these.
I'm trying to remember which. I'm trying to remember which.
So
which
black
one
and
I
white, it
picked.
says Snivy or Snivy, I don't know. Tepig and Oshawott. I think I would pick
Yeah.
Oshawott. He's the cutest one out
I
of the
think
three.
that's the one. I'm pretty sure that's the one I picked.
Yeah. Which
Yeah, I picked. I definitely picked Oshawott.
we haven't
I
talked
wish he
about
would have.
this.
Go ahead.
ahead.
I was gonna say. I wish he would have stayed as like a bipedal otter.
Mhm.
Like if you look at like he turns into Samurott.
Okay. Yep.
Which is like is a cool design, but like he starts off as a little otter and then becomes this like I don't know
Not
what.
even otter thing. Like he's got a
Yeah,
horn
that's
on
what I'm
his
saying.
head.
Yeah, it's like a cool looking thing, but it's just like it made me regret picking Oshawott. Like,
Yeah.
and then the other two are pretty neat as well. But what were you going to ask?
Yeah. So, and actually, I'll ask you this question because I didn't know this. I was looking it up on the side as we were chatting about this. But as you kind of zoom out and look at all the different Pokemon games, they all have something in common. The starter is always a grass type, fire type, water type. I was curious, why did the Pokemon Company decide that? And so I guess I'll give you a second, Gavin, if you want to give your own point of view versus like what I found on the internet. But
I have no idea, honestly.
yeah,
I mean,
So-
maybe it's because like it's like a rock paper scissors type thing because like they're each strong against each other. That's the thing I could think of.
that's kind of what they're saying, yeah. So basically the answer I found, and obviously leave it in the comments if you guys know the specific answer and like where we can find out more, but the answer that I found is on PokemonDB.net. And so it says this probably is because of the water, fire, and grass are one of the most important elements of the earth. They're also the primordial elements. They can easily be linked to the fact that the starter Pokemon are the first Pokemon you actually encounter and have. And these three types are also the easiest to pick up when teaching someone Pokemon, which is often assumed. So I guess it's more like from a versatility perspective, like, grass type, water type, fire type, they do tend to overpower some of the other subgenres or subtypes of Pokemon. So that kind of does make sense. Like, it would almost be like if you had to start with a ground type Pokemon and like the very first person that you're fighting is ground also. Like that'd be challenging, I'm assuming. So
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Yeah,
But
there's been
like we said,
speculation that they'll. Yeah, I was gonna say there's been speculation that because they've made other like if you look at some of the other types, there's other like kind of trios that can be had like that are like work and like there's like psychic fighting dark you could technically do
yeah.
and stuff like that. So people have wanted other starting types. I don't think they'll ever go away from it. They have they have their formula and they're gonna stick to it.
Yeah. Yeah. I just always thought that was interesting because that's the thing that's the same throughout each of them.
Yeah, there's always if you look at a Pokemon game like zoomed out, there's always fire water grass. There's always like a bug that you will get super early that'll evolve fast and then be bad by the time you get to the late game. There's always some type of like bird. Like there's a bird you get early. Yeah, that's like they kind of have like they have a formula that they
have a
like,
template that they follow.
If you zoom out and like look at it and like analyze it, they kind of do that. So yeah.
Yeah, for sure.
And
Cool.
then
Nintendo 3DS is what.
Yeah, I was gonna say next on we go to Generation 6 on the 3DS, which is your Pokemon X and Pokemon Y. And this one had some pretty good starter choices. This first introduced the fairy typing, so it's new typing finally because up until that point, dragons were by far the strongest type because it had no real weakness other than dragon itself, and then ice, but there wasn't a lot of good ice Pokemon, kind of. So this is the first, like, all right, this is a type that cannot get hit by dragon type moves and also is super effective into dragon. So, like, it's gonna hit you hard and not get hit in return. This is one of the generations where it's kind of hard to choose between the three starters. If you want to look at them on the branching evolutions, this might be the worst middle evolution of Chespin evolving into Quilladin. Might be the worst design for a middle evolution. Looks pretty rough. And then like the final form Chestnut looks pretty cool. But
almost looks like Buzz Lightyear with his wings.
It kind of does.
I'm just gonna show everybody on the stream here. So yeah, this is what Chestnut
Yeah,
looks
that's
like.
Chestnut. And then click on the Quilladin so you can see the
Hmm.
monstrosity.
It's just like, and what is he supposed to even be? Because obviously I didn't play this
I
one. So
don't
like, is
know.
yeah,
Cause like go to like Chespin like looks like a little chipmunk,
right.
kind of like a cute little chipmunk. So I don't know what the heck. I guess it's like a chipmunk with some armor on, but like that's bad armor. I don't know.
I
So
have a
then you go to
theory.
the yeah.
It's a chipmunk to start, but then he goes to hibernate, and then he comes out of hibernation and he's fat. So there you go. That's the evolution. And then
That's
Chestnut,
what that sounds
whatever.
pretty good. Yeah, Chestnut looks cool.
Mm-hmm.
Um, so then the other one is Finnegan,
Mm-hmm.
Braxian, Delphox, which is like a cool like you. I think you might like this. It's because it's a psychic fire type, and it ends up
Okay.
being. It starts off as like a cute little fox, but then it
Mm-hmm.
ends up being like a fire witch. Is like
Oh
the
wow.
aesthetic that they're going for.
Nice. That's cool. Yeah, I think I would
Yeah,
like this.
yeah, it's a pretty cool one. And then Brokey, which is a cute little water frog that eventually evolves into one of the most popular Pokemon in all of Pokemon, Greninja.
Very cool.
Is a I mean it's a sick looking it's a freaking it's a water dark type, which is like a rare typing. And then it's just yeah, I mean like it's just a badass looking ninja.
Mm-hmm.
And so
Yes.
like that has become one of the most popular Pokemon. It's probably third behind Pikachu and Charizard as far as like the most popular one.
Oh, really?
But yeah,
Okay.
yeah, it's like people love Greninja.
And is this his tongue? I'm assuming.
Yeah, that's his tongue.
Okay.
You don't we don't we you know try not to think about that because it is a little gross if you think about it.
Yeah.
But
Just wrapping
yeah,
my tongue around my neck and just like,
yeah,
yeah,
exactly.
yeah, we'll leave that there. So,
Yeah, and then so X and Y came out, and that added the Mega Evolution, which is a new temporary evolution style, which gave a lot of forms to new Pokemon and stuff. And then you had Omega Ruby and Alpha Sapphire, which were remakes. You know, they kind of have a tendency to do this if you notice throughout the things where they remake one of the older generations for the new console, bring it some life, that kind of stuff. Those ones were great. Then you had Sun and Moon, which were kind of like this is when Pokemon kind of started experimenting a little bit with formats because up until that point every game was get 8 gym badges, go fight the Elite Four, become the Pokemon champion. Well, this one is based on Hawaii, which is pretty cool in general, but instead of going to your 8 different gyms. You went to different islands along the Alola. Alola was the region. You went to different islands and you battled a kahuna on each island and you wanted to win the island trial. And then once you beat all the island trials, so it's a similar thing, but they just weren't called gyms and they're structured a little differently. And it was really cool. This generation is also the first one that introduced regional forms
hmm,
of old Pokemon. So like you had like they brought back like Vulpix, Executor, Sandslash. They brought back a lot of Generation 1 Pokemon for this thing. And so it's like it was a cool concept because it's like how would this Pokemon be different if it was like if it had been raised in a different environment? Like for example, Vulpix and Ninetales, instead of being a fire type, is an ice type. And it
interesting.
looks
And they
really
still have the same
cool.
name.
Yeah, it's if you like pull it up on the Pokemon DB,
Hmm.
it's just type in like Ninetales, and then you'll have to click on like if you'll see it's a Alolan Ninetales. It's still Ninetales, but it's the Alolan version. It's an Ice and Fairy type, and like
Interesting.
it was just a cool way of reimagining old Pokemon to like look like that, like to fit the aesthetic of whatever it was. Like this is like a instead of being a fire like fox kind of thing, this is like a ice like it looks really cool. And then
Yeah,
like
I
a
see it
funny
now.
one is Executor. If you remember Executor is like a big tree with like little coconuts. Well, the Alolan version is like a big palm tree and it has like a incredibly long neck as opposed to the regular version where it's just like kind of short and stumpy. And they did like do that kind of stuff is really cool. Like there's also yeah, exactly. And then like Doug Trio. Doug Trio is a fun one because it has hair and it look Yeah, Execute's just the same. That's what's funny. It's like sometimes they're the same, but like if you look up Doug Trio, it's a really fun one.
But yeah, it's got it's got like a
So,
perm. That's hilarious.
it's like surfer hair,
Yeah,
which
that's awesome.
I learned because like when it first came out, I was like, this is stupid. They're just giving it hair. And
Mhm.
then I learned more about it. So you notice it has the steel type. And I learned that like around some volcanoes in Hawaii, there's this like this type of metal, like it's like little fibrous metal that happens near volcanoes that looks like hair. So like it makes sense that these guys would have that little hair, have those little hairs because like it has it. And if you look at the Diglett, he just has like 3 little hairs. It's so funny.
Mhm. Mhm.
But so it actually like makes sense thematically that they have hair. It's not just like a I mean it is
Not just a
random, but it
cutesy
actually
thing.
it has yeah, it's not like they just wanted to make it have hair. It actually like has like a little bit of like real world ties to the Hawaiian area, which is really cool. But he looks like just a tan surfer dude compared to regular Diglett.
That's hilarious. And I
Yeah,
actually have a question for you. So, when we were growing up,
I know exactly where this
remembering
is going.
Diglett, is this a nose or is this a mouth?
I've always thought of that as the nose.
I did too. And now that I see it, I almost just see like this gaping mouth. I don't,
That
do
is
you
kind
know
of
which one
funny.
it is?
I think it's the nose.
Okay.
I'm not choosing to believe that's his mouth going ah like
Yeah.
that is the nose. Like it's just it is like I refuse to acknowledge anything else.
But it does kind of look like a mouth too. I mean,
It kind of does, yeah.
yeah, I don't know. Leave it
Definitely.
in the comments what you guys think. I don't know.
Yeah, yeah. Leave which one are you, a noser or a mouther?
Mm-hmm.
That's weird. So then the last games that they made for the 3DS were the Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon, which follows the trend what they did with Black 2, White 2, where they made semi-sequel games to the original that added more to it and stuff like that. Introduced like Ultra Beasts, which are a whole line of Pokemon that are kind of controversial because a lot of them don't look like Pokemon, like what you would traditionally think a Pokemon looks like. And it was just super fun. Like they're very strong, hard to catch. You'd go into these like wormholes to like go to them, go catch them, and they're very strong and all this stuff. And so it's not like actual controversial, but like a little bit of controversial. Like, do you consider them Pokemon because they're from a different like dimension and all this like weird finicky stuff. But I don't know, they're pretty cool. Like one of them's name's Buzzwole. It's just a buff bee. Like it's just a swole like his name Buzz Swole is like perfectly describes what it is.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I'm assuming since this is before you got back into it, you didn't play any of them.
No, I didn't, unfortunately.
Yeah, they're fun. I mean, they're fun, obviously. Yeah. So then let's get back into the next generations, which would be the Switch. The first games that came out for the first Pokemon game that came out for the Switch was Let's Go Eevee / Let's Go Pikachu, which was another like this was another example of Pokemon Company kind of experimenting a little bit and also making a game. I think they were kind of testing the Switch to see how it would work. So these are kind of games where it's similar to Yellow, where you don't have a choice between Bulb. It's the Kanto game, so like it's the original game, but like Yellow, you don't have a choice in your starter. You woke up late. You either have an Eevee or a Pikachu as your starter. And fun fact on both of them, you can't evolve them. So like in
Mm.
Yellow, you could not evolve that Pikachu into a Raichu. With this one, you cannot evolve the Eevee into any of its forms. And same with Pikachu, you can't evolve it. So they compensate by giving it special moves that only it can learn in that game to like make it like not a weak little first stage Pokemon. But other than that, it introduced like a new kind of catching mechanic where there's Pokemon in the overworld, you run into them, and then you had to like they kind of like pulled from Pokemon Go a little bit. You had to like flick the Joy-Con to like do a throwing motion. It was literally that's how you caught it. It wasn't battling them. It was
Hmm.
the Pokemon Go like the circle comes in, you have to do perfect throws to like have better chances.
Yeah.
And then people kind of didn't like that for that game, so they shied away from it afterwards. But I think they were trying to see how people would be receptive to it. And yeah, it was. I mean, there was a lot of fun things about it. It was goofy. It was it was kind of safe because it was, the game in and out. You can go through Mount Moon with your eyes closed, not needing flash, that kind of thing. And then after that, which I'm assuming you didn't play that one because you didn't get back until Scarlet Violet. After that came Sword and Shield, which is home to my boy Applin, which we talked about, and then your boy Toxtricity, which that one is based on the UK, has like a bunch of cool new Pokemon, some more different forms of old Pokemon, kind of back to its roots a little bit where you're going through gym battles and going back to that. It was the first like 3D like version of the game because they're capable of doing it. So people were excited about that aspect of it. And then all of your gym battles and stuff were in these like big stadiums because it was like a sport there, and like you had like crowd full of people, and they introduced a new mechanic called Gigantamaxing, which is another temporary evolution where the Pokemon would literally for 3 turns just turn into a giant form, and some of them had like they would look different than normal other than just being huge. And it was pretty cool. Have different stats and stuff. That one's fun. Has a lot of really cool Pokemon that were added in it. Shortly after that, you had Brilliant Pearl, Shining Diamond. Actual controversial remake that people didn't like because people were excited that they were going to be remaking this generation because it's a lot of people's favorite. They chose to make Diamond and Pearl instead of Platinum, which is considered to be the better of the 3 games. And then also, they didn't, unlike other remakes where they pulled it to the current standard with Brilliant Pearl and Shining Diamond, they kept it in the old school format but made it look new with the graphics. So they didn't like bring it to like make it look 3D. They had like little tiny models that are like awkward looking, and like there was a lot of pushback on it, and I think it suffered a little bit because of that. I mean, it's still Diamond and Pearl. They're still great games, don't get me wrong, and they added some cool new stuff, but I think a lot of the fandom was hesitant toward it at first because they didn't like the art direction.
Yeah, that makes sense. It almost looks like Link's Awakening style, if you've ever
Mhm.
played Link's Awakening on Switch.
And people didn't like that because that doesn't look like a Pokemon game. Like
It doesn't.
They either wanted it to look like the old game, but like somehow 3Dify that, which I don't know how you do that, or do Sword and Shield but make it Platinum. And they didn't do that either. So like when it was first announced, that's what people were expecting, and then this came out, and everyone's like, "We hate this."
Yeah.
So then we get into modern age, still on the Switch, even into the Switch 2. These games are on the Switch 2 as well. You had Legends Arceus, which is Pokemon Legends Arceus, which was like Pokemon really like cooking and trying stuff. Like it's a very fun game. The basis of the game is you're in like feudal time Japan, so like very far in the past, but you're from the future, but you get like mysteriously teleported to the past, and like you get to see the region, like you get to see a region of Pokemon before it's the game you played, right? It's like 500 or something years before, so it's like ancient Pokemon. Like Pokeballs are first starting to be created, and they're like these like super mechanical looking things, and there wasn't really gym battles. You would run around and catch Pokemon, and like you were kind of like on you're in the scouting mission, like scouting party, and the whole concept of the game was you were trying to learn as much as you can about Pokemon because like it was like kind of an not like unknown thing, but no one had really taken the time to research it. So to progress in the game, instead of doing your normal like go to a gym, fight the gym leader, go to the next gym, it was like go to this area and we're going to research it as much as possible by catching like you'd have to catch certain Pokemon like 5 times, use type of move, evolve them, all this other kind of thing. And then there was random, like there was a newish mechanic called Alpha Pokemon. They was like super powered Pokemon for some reason, and they were enraged and you had to like fight them and calm them down. That was like your boss per section. And it was really cool. People liked it a lot, but they're like, while it's still technically considered a mainline Pokemon game, they're like, this isn't my mainline Pokemon game I want. It's different. I like it, but it's different.
Yeah.
So did you ever play any of the Legends Arceus?
No, I didn't, but this was shortly before I got back into Pokemon. So I didn't know what Arceus was.
Mm-hmm.
And I like the fact that Pokemon finally did something different. Like this is definitely different from what they were doing in the past. And I like the open worldy nature of like going and
Mhm.
finding the Pokemon in the wild versus just like rustling through the grass and then randomly
Yeah,
finding
yeah,
a
yeah.
Pokemon. Like that's cool. So I
Yeah.
liked that they were going like a step in that direction. So yeah, I never played it myself. I've watched like a before you buy kind of thing on YouTube, but
Mhm.
never got into it myself.
Yeah, it was super fun because like when you'd be walking through these wild areas, it's like you really go out. Like if you go out into the wild and you see a lion, the lion could just turn around and attack you. Like it's not just like guaranteed to not do anything. And like
Right.
in this, it could like you could see like a Luxray, and if you don't sneak up on it before you throw the Pokeball at it, it would literally just turn and start running at you and hitting you, and like you could actually get fainted yourself and not even use your Pokemon, and then it just throws you back to your last like. Then have traditional Pokemon centers, but your Pokemon Center like camp
Right.
area,
Yep.
and it was which was an interesting thing because you like it's something you never had to think of as like playing Pokemon before,
Right.
and then so that was cool, and then also they added again they continued this trend that they've started to do that I like where they have the different forms of Pokemon you know and love, where the Hisuian versions. They also did like different evolutions of old Pokemon, so it's a new evolution, but it's like in the past, so it's like that evolution kind of died off, and then like this Pokemon just stayed at the one stage. Like they added like Ursa Luna was a new evolution of Ursa Ring, and then you had like Wordier was an evolution of what is Wordier? Why am I drawing a blank?
And this is still on Arceus.
Yeah, this is all in Arceus. A Wordier was like a different version of Stantler, like kind of like an
Hmm.
evolution of Stantler, which is like the just the regular. And then you had like a Cleavor, which is like a prehistoric version of an evolution towards Scyther, where he's like instead of scythes for hands, he had big like rock axes. It's like cool stuff. So
Nice.
then yeah, so like yeah, I think they took some of the lessons from that and then added it to the next game, which is the last main series Pokemon game that's come out, Scarlet Violet. It's still the current game, which hopefully here next week we'll be talking about the announcement for a new game. Not that Scarlet Violet's bad. It did have some of its issues. Pokemon did fall into the trap of some of the other developers when they release it. On release, there were some bugs that were kind of funny, but
Yeah.
kind of broke the game a little bit. Like there would be issues where if you were riding so they changed the dynamic of instead of having a bicycle and stuff like that, you had the legendary Pokemon of
That you
like the
would ride
cover,
around.
whichever one, yeah, you would ride around. It was your bike. There's some like weird glitches where it would like change the size of it and you'd be like 100 feet tall and like it was just goofy stuff like that. They got
Hmm.
patched pretty quick and like it was kind of unplayable for a little bit, like a little cyberpunk ish.
Yeah.
Not nearly as bad, but it was like that for a little bit.
Right.
And then, I mean, it's technically the first open world because you could go battle any, like you said, you stumbled into the one area and caught the toxicity and it was over the level cap that you had. You technically could go anywhere and do anything. And that was like, at first people were hesitant, but then like once they realized there's kind of an intended order, they figured that out and did that.
Yep.
And they also just liked it. And it's just a fun game. And then
I liked it.
recently, yeah, I love that. It's such a fun game. And then this last game that just came out was another installment in the Legends series. This one, Pokemon Legends ZA, which takes place a little bit instead of being in the past, it takes place a little bit after X and Y game,
Hmm.
XYZ, and it's in a continuation of that story while keeping the style of play similar to the Legends series. And people so far have really liked it. I think it just came out in October of last year, if I remember
I
correctly.
think you're right.
And yeah, and people, it's been fun. I've played it a little bit, not as much as I should, but it's been fun. And those
Yeah.
are not so brief history of all the consoles
They were attached
and
to the
games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
This one's interesting too. Obviously, I didn't play ZA. I don't know that I will, to be completely honest. I have
Yeah.
to be kind of like in a mood to play Pokemon, and
That's
it
fair.
kind of comes every couple years or so. I'm really hoping something comes out with this 30th anniversary that's going to come out that's really going to kind of blow our minds, which we'll talk about here in a little bit.
Yeah.
But I think the interesting thing, and obviously you keep me honest if this is incorrect, but looking at the Pokemon DB website, I think the interesting thing here is we're introducing starter Pokemon, but like mixing it, if that makes sense. Like I guess Chikorita is a starter, and then Tepig, and then
Yeah.
Totodile. Which Totodile
Yeah,
and
so
Chikorita
they did
are
a
from the
similar
same
thing.
era, right?
Yeah. So they did a similar thing with Legends Arceus where they pulled starters from different games.
Mm-hmm.
And then they ended up what they did with Arceus was they ended up with a final evolution that was different.
Mm-hmm.
See how like the Decidueye looks different, your
Yep.
Typhlosion looks different, and your Samurai
Yep.
looks different. So they give it different typing,
Mm-hmm.
and they gave it like made it look different, which is funny. You're talking about the emo thing, which that Typhlosion is like the most emo looking
Oh
Pokemon
my gosh, yeah.
almost ever.
Yeah.
Like he listens to Blink 182. Let's be real.
100%.
So
100%. Which we have
what
to go back to
so
that.
what they ended up doing,
There was a specific one here that was okay. Here, this has to be the most
is
emo
Sword and Shield
Pokemon.
Sobble.
Yes, look at it.
Yeah.
Like he
It
starts
starts
as
off
a
as
sad
like
boy,
he starts off fine. He's like whatever.
but look, he's
Yeah,
sad
he's like
already.
a little
Sob,
sad boy, and then
sob. Yeah, and then Drizzile,
yeah,
dude
oh
is
yeah,
emo
Sobble.
for sure. He's listening to
Yeah, he
Black
just
Parade by
figured
My
out
Chemical Romance. 100%.
yeah, Chase Larison would love this guy's playlist. Let's just
Yes.
put it that way.
Yes, 100%. But this guy looks cool,
And then he becomes like a secret agent.
right?
Like he goes from Hot Topic to like
James Bond.
James Bond. Like
Mhm.
yeah.
So funny. Anyways,
And
I had
he's
to go
even the
back to
secret
that.
agent Pokemon. Yeah.
Mhm.
No,
Crazy.
that's yeah. So what I was saying was, like you said, they brought back old starters for Legends ZA, which is part of the reason why people don't consider it a new game because that doesn't bring new Pokemon to it. But what they did instead of doing the final forms being different, they gave it Mega Evolutions, which some of them look pretty cool. But so that was the new aspect that they added to those. And like in general, there's a bunch of new Mega Evolutions that were added to a bunch of Pokemon in that game. Yeah, I mean, it's been fun. You kind of just run around Lumiose City, which is like the big in the original games, that was like the big hub city, and it's still small because it's a Pokemon game. But for Legends ZA, they like made it feel like the size of a full city because that's the only spot that you're in, which is kind of cool. And then now that we're done with that, like going through like the brief history, I thought it'd be nice, even though we kind of alluded to it a little bit in the episode itself, to do some like, do a couple finishing off questions here, like Pokemon likes and dislikes. I'd say like what draws you to Pokemon and what do you think it could do better? I can go first if you'd like.
Go ahead. Yep.
I mean, it's just the designs of the Pokemon are awesome. They're cute little creatures. You run around the world catching them. I mean, it got me at the right time when it came out. I was the right age, and it was running around catching. The idea of just leaving home and running around the world and catching Pokemon and battling with other people was great, and it was just fun. It was just fun concept, and the battling was fun. One thing I would think it could do better is like have some sort of difficulty slider. Because like kind of like what I talked about with the Nuzlocke earlier is like Pokemon is kind of just easy. Like back when it was created, it was only young people playing it for the most part, but a lot of us are old now, so we're better at video games, so we can afford to like have a difficult game. Like I understand why they skew towards easy because then you can hit the widest range, but I wish they could put some sort of difficulty setting that can be turned on to allow for like people our age that have the capabilities of making it harder and playing with it harder. Like I wish we could actually do that without having to have these self-imposed challenges, which are fun, but like it's all about keep yourself honest. Like there's no rule that like if you my favorite Pokemon accidentally died, I'm just gonna revive it. Like so I would that those are the things I like and dislike about it. What about you, Dylan?
Yeah, and hopefully I'm not glitching too bad here. My internet's being weird. But I would agree with definitely all your sentiments there. I think I do love the character designs. I like the fact that they keep getting creative with the names, the Pokemon types. Like that's one thing I think Pokemon does really well with like Cyndaquil and like Typhlosion and like all those different ways that like they kind of tie into each other, but they also make sense from like an English perspective. Like Typhlosion being like explosion makes sense, right? Like I like how creative they are with that, and I like seeing the character designs. But I do think one thing that they could do, and obviously Gavin, you're way more into Pokemon than I am, being close to it throughout the entire history there. But I think one thing that they could change about the battle system a bit is make it a little bit more of a modern turn-based RPG. Like, I do like the originals, how it was kind of like my turn, your turn, my turn, your turn, whatever. Like, that's cool. But I almost wonder if they could take a thing from Expedition 33 and almost introduce like a parrying system of some sort. That way you're like constantly engaged in the battle. And then also potentially like almost doing it kind of like Yu-Gi-Oh style, where you would have all your Pokemon out all at once, and any of the Pokemon could attack at any time. Like you could kind of just like they'd all be lined up.
That is
Maybe you only attack one at a time or whatever, but then you can like choose which one you want to like knock off. You know what I mean?
so in the ZA, the Legend ZA, one of the things they did introduce, it's not quite like Expedition 33, but the battles are more like what they are in the anime, where like you can move around. Like you guys are like in a set area and you can move around and you throw attacks out and like you hit an area. It's not necessarily like targeted, so like you can run around and dodge stuff. So they kind of did that. It was fun as like a game gimmick, but there's a lot of people like myself that play it like competitively and like play on like the Pokemon ranked ladder and stuff like that. So like from that aspect, it's kind of lame because it's like certain stuff like I don't want to have to super hard try to learn how to dodge everything. Just keep it to the traditional battle for that from that standpoint. But they have kind of messed around with that, so we'll see if they with the next generation if they decide to do any of that stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, speaking of the next generation, Pokemon Day is coming up. It's next Friday. Noon EST is going to be the Pokemon Presents. Is there anything that you are looking forward to or hoping for this upcoming Pokemon Day?
Good question. Yeah, I think I'm just looking forward to see what they got cooking. I think with it being such a huge anniversary announcement, it's obviously the 30th year. You and I are both in our 30s, so I'm hoping they're doing something for us. But I'm ready to be surprised, and I hope I will be. I think as long as there's cool character designs, as long as they introduce some kind of unique mechanic, I guess that's kind of what I'm looking for, is like deviate from what we know Pokemon to be, like go try something brand new. I mean, you've had time, you've had, all the time to really make sure that the 30th year is a blast. Let's see what you can do. What you guys what you guys have been cooking up, I guess. That's kind of what I'm excited for. The surprise.
Yeah. That makes sense. There's two things I'm looking forward to. One is Pokemon Champions. It's a game that's been announced previously, but we don't know when. It's basically previously up until this point, the competitive, quote unquote competitive scene where people like professionally play has always been on whatever the current game is. So like right now it's Scarlet Violet. Before that it was Sword and Shield. So like that's where they were played, online battles, stuff like that. So they, I believe it was last year, they announced that there's a game called Pokemon Champions where you can transfer your Pokemon into this, and this going forward will be like the definitive game where that kind of stuff is played, which is interesting for a whole lot of reasons. One, to be super brief about it, one, it'll have access to all Pokemon instead of just being only the Pokemon that are available in that generation. Two, they'll have like the different gimmicks, like your Mega Evolutions, you had the Gigantamax, and then with this last one, you had the Terastallization. There's a chance, like, we don't know, this is speculation, but you'll be able to mix and match and use all three. So, like, how is that going to interact with each other? It's something that's always been hypothetical up until this point. And then also, it's going to be available on mobile. So you can play this on mobile devices, like play it on your phone, and I can battle and stuff on phone, because that's one problem I have with the Switch. Because, like, sometimes when you're at work, you want to play on your lunch break, you can't just pop out your Switch. So this would be a cool thing. So that's one of the things I'm looking forward to is Pokemon Champions. And then the second thing I'm also looking forward to is just the new mainline game. Like whatever it's going to be, I'm excited for it. Hope it's cool. I have no idea. I have no expectations for what it'll be. I'm just ready for them to announce it because it's been about long enough, as long as they've done in the cycles with them to be announcing it. So those are the things I'm looking forward to.
Sure. Yeah. Yep. And then hopefully we don't have too much longer to wait. So, I mean, we're only a week away, so that's good.
Yeah, I know. It's crazy. Yeah. So, with all that being said, I wanted to thank you guys for letting us journey through a not so brief history of Pokemon and why we both love it. Make sure you tune into the Pokemon Direct on Pokemon Day this Friday at noon EST. And next week's episode will be a brief reflection and reaction of what events happen in it. We'll say, and then we'll say what we like, what we don't like, etc., etc. And then we're going to be both checking in on our video game book club of Escape Ever After. If you're also playing along, go back into I believe it was episode 4 when we first introduced that. And then we'll talk a little bit about how that's coming along. Maybe if we're both through it, we'll set up the next one. If not, we'll continue to play it a little bit and see how all that's coming along. And then this has been the Millennial Button Masher Podcast. I'm Gavin.
And this is Dylan.
And yeah, and thanks for listening.
Excellent. Yeah. Before everybody drops, make sure you like, subscribe, tune in for our next week's episode. As Gavin mentioned, we're extremely excited to see what's going to come out. And we thank you for watching this podcast. As we mentioned throughout, feel free to comment any of your favorite Pokemon or any of the questions that Gavin and I asked each other. Feel free to put those in the comments below. And we look forward to seeing you all in the next one.